Yeah. Oh. Live.
Your ears ringing?
Yeah. From a woke peat maw bog buried underneath a liberal New Hampshireite. Are there liberal New Hampshireites? It's yet another
Not anymore.
woke Wednesday edition of Business Pants. Joined as always by analyst hole Matt Muscardi. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. Ooh.
In today's cat dander, in the cat dander, or like on the surface
Yes. It's like somewhere buried in the dander.
called January 24th, 2024, the top 9 stories from our ESG News headline randomizer, and a Boeing deep dive part 4000.
You know what? You used to have a lot more like devices.
I've lost all my good humor.
You've lost your touch.
I've lost my
There's
touch.
no more devices. Yeah, that's correct. You have lost your touch.
Our show today is being sponsored by FreeFlow Analytics, the only ESG data platform to measure real board influence and diversity power gaps.
Thank you, FreeFlow.
Because no one else is willing to.
This all possible.
No one else is trying.
That's because you keep swearing. You're just
I don't.
A swearing
I'm actually
machine,
no.
and
You're the
it's
swearer.
like-
I don't swear.
And it's and you know like
I so rarely
you know,
swear.
The big conservative asset managers, they're afraid of swears. They don't swear ever. There's no one at these companies who swears. That's why.
It's
they
true.
don't
Venture
sponsor.
capitalists probably they don't swear.
No, they just hug. Let's do some 9 random
Yeah, come on.
stories.
I got some good ones. I gotta start at the top at Starbucks. I can't believe there's another anecdote related to Howard Schultz about corporate governance that I didn't know. I'm ashamed I didn't know this.
Oh, this is great. I love
Maybe
this.
you knew this, Matt, but this just takes the cake. I had to start with this story.
I like it.
The headline out of the Financial Times was how unions are fighting a boardroom battle at Starbucks. We've actually covered this several times. The Strategic Organizing Center is using their proxy access to get 3 directors up for election this year. Maria Echeveste, Joshua Goutbaum, and Wilma Liebman. So they're trying a different approach to fighting the good old labor fight at Starbucks. Yeah.
Does the Strategic Organizing Center, who works with unions, realize that the people who run the companies matter?
I think that clearly they do. Yeah. Clearly they do. Yeah.
They matter.
So here's the story, and this is from the Financial Times. There's a famous story about Starbucks that is often cited during discussions of governance at
this.
At board meetings. There is an empty chair to represent the interests of the coffee giant's employees. The idea was proposed by its former CEO and founder Howard Schultz to show that the company's baristas have a symbolic seat at the table. Is there a better story in the world of ESG ever than that? It's the best story I've ever heard. What an incredible empty gesture. It's the best ESG empty gesture ever.
Wow, I did not know that this was a thing.
An empty chair. This is according to the Financial Times.
I don't even know
what can you say to this? This is incredible.
Do you think they asked the empty chair what it thinks about
how
certain
many
of their
profound
tactics?
conversations did Howard and the board have with that chair is what I want to know.
The chair.
Yeah.
Was it like that moment when Clint Eastwood talked to an empty chair?
That was during the 2012 Republican convention. He took an empty chair on stage that was supposed to represent Obama, and he yelled at the chair for like 4 hours.
So that's really what it was. Was that it was
I
like
have no
the thing
idea.
They could be like, F you, employees.
I have no idea. And yet another reason to support the Strategic Organizing Center, and yet another reason to care who the directors are that run your company. That's all I'm going to say.
But if Starbucks comes out and says, which they have, that they're against basically everybody put up by the Strategic Organizing Center, does that mean that they prefer the empty employee chair to an actual employee in the chair? Because that's what they're saying.
According to an investor that we just talked to, Matt, nobody cares about the people who run the company. Nobody cares about directors.
That's correct. No one cares about
except
any
for
of this.
evidently the strategic organizing center, which represents like hundreds of thousands of actual workers.
It's funny how little people care until like the company implodes or there's a strike, and then all of a sudden it's where was the governance? Who was manning the wheel here?
Yeah, after the fact.
It's always after. But now we can actually say, in their defense, if there's a massive strike, can't Howard Schultz say you were represented by the empty chair
let you down?
You didn't speak
but they
up.
still,
Matt,
I have to ask, and maybe you can ask your followers on LinkedIn: would investors vote out the empty chair?
I think empty chairs get voted out at a 0.3% rate instead of 0.2.
Okay. Next story. Outrageous CEO pay targeted a new bill from Bernie Sanders, of course, and the Democrats. This is a union-backed proposal that would also require Treasury guidelines to prevent companies from avoiding the tax by using contractors rather than employees. So what they want to do is this measure would raise the tax rate on companies whose CEO to worker salary ratio was above 50-1, going all the way up to 500 times to 1, and those companies would incur a tax penalty of 5 percentage points. It all sounds great. This speaks right into our wheelhouse, Matt. The big problem with this, of course, is that the bill would need 60 votes to clear the Senate, and we know that that's impossible. It's impossible.
It's already dead. Yeah. It's dead on arrival.
You know, maybe some of the
fun idea.
Maybe some of the faux Republican populists will get behind this. Who knows?
It would be lovely if Bernie Sanders actually presented this bill to an empty chair and asked it to vote.
Well, I mean, isn't that kind of what the Senate has become?
That's zing.
The next story here from ESG Randomizer: the Financial Reporting Council, the FRC, has removed all. Yes, they have removed all references to ESG in a new version of the UK Corporate Governance Code, of all things.
Wait,
this isn't Larry Fink.
Acronym? The acronym? Because it's called the Corporate
Governance
Code. That's G.
It's confusing.
That's the G.
According to this reporting, the final draft document before this final document came out contained 14 actual references to the term ESG, and those have all been stripped. They've also decided to drop many planned changes, including those relating to the role of audit committees on ESG, modifications to existing provisions around diversity, overboarding, et cetera. So it looks like another version of people kind of buckling to anti-ESG pressure.
People know that ESG is just a data set. That's all it is.
I don't know what they know anymore. I don't know. This is the Financial Reporting Council.
Look, in fairness to the Financial Reporting Council, they never knew about what ESG was, right? Like ESG was like 24 cowboys and girls collecting data and thinking it's interesting, and that was kind of it. Like that, so that they didn't know what it meant is really not surprising. Mm-hmm. That they feel the need to scrub it is really sort of asinine. Yeah. Like, let's get real.
Speaking of anti-ESG, anti-woke stories,
I don't like this.
There's a conspiracy going around about the Oscar nominations. So the 96th Academy Awards nominations came out yesterday, and what did they do, Matt? They nominated the actor who played Ken in the Barbie movie, but they did not nominate Barbie herself, nor did they nominate the feminist director Greta Gerwig, who directed Barbie. Yet they nominated the picture itself, Barbie, for Best Picture. So you see what's happening. Anti-ESG has infiltrated the Oscars suddenly somehow.
There were a lot of memes.
There should have been. This is awkward.
I mean, it's fairly.
Even Ryan Gosling himself, the actor who plays Ken, is pissed off. He should be pissed off because it makes him look weird.
Have you seen Barbie?
Well,
yet?
I have to say I have not seen it, but I support it. I support its feminist ideas. I tried to see it when we were in Connecticut, but it just didn't happen.
Well, I haven't seen it. So I don't know. Maybe maybe it's possible that the directing and the and Margot Robbie were terrible in it. And it was really Ryan Gosling and the overall
thing
that was good. The
somehow was not responsible for
her directions were
sucked,
bad, but the
but the
picture
film
was good.
itself was good, which is an impossibility. Yeah.
Next year, I really hope the Academy Awards just nominates an empty chair to win for the. I can't get over the empty chair. I want that everywhere
that's
now.
the best story. Moving on, J.P. Morgan's Jamie Dimon talks DEI. That's the headline, which could be scary. But
yeah, I don't like this.
This is good news. This is a good story. He says,
"Oh, is it?"
Quote, I'm going to start by telling you that I'm a full-throated, red-blooded, patriotic, unwoke capitalist CEO. He said this
okay.
at an event hosted by the Female Quotient at the World Economic Forum. I don't know what that is. You know what the Female Quotient is?
No,
Okay.
I don't. Is that the denominator of females?
I don't know, but he says I'm not woke anything. But then he went on to say, he says, still the bank, which is recording record profits as we speak and is approaching a market value of $500 billion, is not retreating from its diversity efforts despite the ridiculous ESG DEI groups coming at us. So they're not retreating. He also recalled a story back in the day. He said that J.P. Morgan's HR department used to brag years ago about the firm's diversity progress. But they did this by fusing all the underrepresented groups under one lump category. He responded by saying, don't lump it together. Come back and show me the numbers, by VPs, executive directors, managing directors, hiring, retention.
I like that.
And they did.
That's good.
And he went on to say that the data showed that for women, excellent, Hispanic, excellent, LGBT, excellent, Asian American, excellent, Black, average. He goes on to say, worse still, the bank had been recruiting historically Black colleges and universities for years, and he said that's not J.P. Morgan. We don't want to be average. So, blah blah blah. The point is that unlike his cohort over at BlackRock, and I guess the Financial Reporting Council in the UK, he is leaving in ESG and DEI. He's supporting it.
But here's what I don't like. Every one of these morons has to now preface it with a McCarthyist statement saying, I'm a red-blooded,
still a man.
patriot.
I'm still a heterosexual. But
do they grab their crotch while they do
I
it?
sleep with women, but it's okay. Yeah, no, I know it's.
Just so you know, I sleep in a bed of money and then I hire blacks.
I'm not a virgin.
What is
I'm a heterosexual.
Why do we have to qualify it? Just say.
Just support it.
We hire the best people and we try to get the widest.
And we have record profits.
That we can.
Record profits.
Yeah, who's complaining at this point? Yeah. If we hired all Black people from now on, if we win, what do you give a fuck?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't understand why we have to open with a red-blooded patriot. Like, does he wave a flag when he said it too? Like, it's just so stupid.
Moving on. Oh, this is a good one, Matt. Dwayne Johnson. You know who Dwayne Johnson is?
Yeah, The Rock.
The Rock.
Of course I know Dwayne
The Rock
Johnson.
is going to be a new director in our database. He joins the board of TKO.
So first of all, Rock, I have to tell you, you're going to have 0% influence. It's a controlled company, and no one cares about what you think.
That might be true, but he may not care, Matt, because he also entered into a services agreement with the company, which he will receive $30 million in stock.
Ooh.
So that's a pretty good it's a good directing gig, huh?
But I like that he's there. I like that he'll be smiling. I have a sense that he will probably ask questions that will be decent questions that he'll play off as I'm dumb. Someone explain this to me. Like I can imagine the whole aura of it, and they'll just all they're going to want to do is fist bump him and have him out there. Is this some version of when Papa John's added Shaq to the board?
How dare you? Well, no.
Isn't this the distraction from the fact that Vince McMahon is listed as a risk factor? You add The Rock. Now we can squash the risk because we have a big man who can punch him.
I will say two things. First of all, this is a boardroom where it is appropriate to have an empty chair because wrestlers love to throw chairs at each other, do they not?
Yes, that's
but second,
correct.
what I'm going to disagree.
somewhere.
This is not a Shaq situation. Dwayne Johnson is an employee of the company. So what I'm hoping is that this is the start of a stakeholder revolution where we start to add employees to the boards of American companies. That's what I'm hoping.
I'm not sure this
No?
a
Won't
$30
happen?
million stock-based services agreement does not qualify as an employee,
So
like
what-
a rego.
So what it seems is that at TKO, Dwayne Johnson will fill the empty chair that represents employees, whereas at Starbucks it'll stay
like that.
empty, right? Unless shareholders support the slate of directors being put up by the strategic organizing
I
center.
might not support them just to have the empty chair there in perpetuity. They've done a really good tenure. They got some good. Yeah, they've seen a lot.
You're going to talk about airlines next, but a brief story here. Southwest Airlines flight attendants have voted to approve a strike or authorization. Over 98% of the members voted in favor. Two more stories.
crowd's
How about this? This is a story about a director at Tesla.
What?
Yeah.
There are those?
It says,
Since
here's the
when?
story. Kimball Musk, director at
I think
Tesla,
that should be a swear now.
said he, quote, felt the voice of God, end quote, after a near-death experience and later taking ayahuasca, the psychedelic drug. Yeah.
Here's a question. Can we would it be considered overboarding if you took the empty chair and replaced Kimball Musk with it? Is the empty chair then overboarded because it's on more than one
All
board?
I got to say is to Tesla investors is you now have another director who's taking ayahuasca and saying that he felt the voice of God, and you're still like, you don't care.
I like that there was stories that broke like just a few weeks ago when the Wall Street Journal did that expose on Musk himself and
all his
drug
drugs,
use.
yeah.
Where they went to Kimball, the board members went to Kimball to ask if Elon was okay. Meanwhile, Kimball's like, smoking a reefer and taking ayahuasca and being like, yeah, dude, he's great.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Like, what
Well,
is-
that's the drug I know where not only do you get to talk to God, but you're also throwing up and having like diarrhea at the same time. Like everything comes out at
Ooh.
once. So this is the Tesla board.
I don't like
No,
that.
I don't
I
either.
don't like that. I don't like that.
And finally, another great story today. It's been a good woke Wednesday of random ESG stories. Here's the headline out of Fortune magazine. I don't know if it deserves a drum roll.
I like drum roll.
Over 2,000 shell companies have directors aged 123 years or older, according to research by Moody's Analytics. They found 21 million red flags associated with shell companies that could be used to enable financial crimes, from ancient directors to dubious addresses. One listed director, Matt, was 942 years old.
I mean, look.
There's also
Congrats to them for making that milestone. It's really hard to be a director for that long.
There's also thousands of examples of directors below the age of 5. That's right, 5.
Oh, that's not good.
And 22,000 entities with a registered address at Egypt's pyramids. Meanwhile, one individual held over 5,000 roles at 2,800 different entities. They call this is a term I haven't heard of.
Was that the empty chair?
This is a term I haven't heard of, according to Moody's Analytics. They said that atypical directorship is just one of 7 key behaviors highlighted in the research. But again, I'm going to repeat sarcastically that we were just told by an investor last week that nobody cares about the directors or the people. So,
That's correct.
so
That no
really,
one cares.
you should throw away this Moody's Analytics. Throw away this evidence of financial crimes. Right? What does it matter?
First of all, like I know we use free flow analytics data here, but Moody's Analytics is on a tear. They've done some really good governance stuff. They actually did an anti-woke proposal paper. They seem to be on top of the governance game, as in someone at Moody's has said, hey, you know what matters? Who runs companies? Let's look at them. And they're doing a good job looking at it. Second of all, if there's anything that should show that you should at least do like the bare minimum of due diligence. One thing you might notice is that someone was listed as 942 years old.
People don't
on
matter.
Your board.
They don't matter.
That seems like something you would notice.
That's all I got, Matt. What do you got today?
That was fabulous. What that was. I wish I had more of that.
I'm not going to be
but
able
I
to
don't.
find one. I'm not going to be able to find an empty chair at board meetings. It's going to take me a long time.
I'm really pissed that we did not predict empty chairmanships.
Howard Schultz is the ESG gift that keeps giving. Yeah.
So I just have an update on everybody's favorite worst company ever,
Which
and
is
that is Boeing.
Okay, all right.
We're going to talk about.
I'm
Boeing.
glad you're talking about Boeing because I tagged several stories this morning, Matt, of like, I'm going to paraphrase, like things falling off of like nose things falling, like fire shooting out. I don't know. There's just like a lot of weird stuff going on.
So there was fire shooting out that apparently had more to do with like birds or something. It didn't have to do with engine failure.
It wasn't Dave Calhoun.
No. Dave Calhoun did not jump into the engine because it was better than running Boeing right now. Here are 4 fun headlines for everybody's favorite company. First up is United CEO seems to subtly threaten a move away from Boeing, saying the MAX 9 grounding is the straw that broke the camel's back.
Thank you. I'm glad someone's getting angry at something.
Yeah, somebody cares about who's running Boeing, and the somebody didn't even get named in the headline. It just says United CEO, and that is Scott Kirby.
On a related note, we have a young listener who pointed out to me yesterday that he appreciates our reporting on this one issue that news organizations do not name the executives or directors who run these companies. So we do have one listener who appreciates this sentiment.
I'm glad, and hopefully they are incredibly
I hope he stays
wealthy
alive.
benefactors.
No, he's not. He's a kid. He's a teenager.
United CEO's name is Scott Kirby, and what he said was, quote, the MAX 9 grounding is probably the straw that broke the camel's back for us. We're going to build an alternative plan that just doesn't have the MAX 10 in it. And this is they United had placed an order for MAX 10 planes, expecting them soon, but he now believes the best case for deliveries are 5 years behind schedule. 5 years behind schedule.
So
that's the best case.
What is we're talking about Nel Minow talking about the duopoly that exists in this industry. What is the alternative plan? Is it just another Boeing plane or is it Airbus?
Currently is Airbus.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And Airbus is the reason why Boeing fast-tracked the MAX 8 planes that killed hundreds of people because they were competing.
And yet,
but
and to solve this problem internally, they promoted someone who was already on the board in the first place to run the company.
Yeah. The obvious choice would have been somebody who got them in the position that sucked.
The man providing oversight on the CEO who screwed everything up was promoted to be the next CEO.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was like a self-promotion because, like, when you're the guy who's the boss of the boss, and you say, "Well, it's just easier if I'm the boss and the boss." That's the way that worked out. Here's another headline, also omitting Scott Kirby's name. United CEO is so concerned about Boeing's latest disaster, he's been venting to colleagues and lobbying Pete Buttigieg. Sources say.
Okay.
So apparently, the transportation department doesn't actually have legal authority to dictate changes at Boeing's leadership, but no one cares about the leadership because those are just people. We're not thinking about them, but they can and they may take enforcement action or other steps against the company. But United CEO Scott Kirby is not just saying he's pissed about not getting planes. He's actually calling Pete Buttigieg and saying, this isn't okay. What can we do?
I'll remind the audience that current CEO Dave Calhoun became a director at Boeing in 2009. And then,
that's correct.
And then in 2018, he became the lead independent director. And then in 2020, when was that 2020? When Dennis Muhlenberg, I believe his name was, the CEO stepped down. Dave Calhoun essentially promoted himself as one of the leaders of the board to internally fix this problem, and yet, like years later, we have the same problems going on. I'm gonna remind people why it's important to focus on the people who run your companies.
Well, these are new problems, and they include a story that you pulled that is nose wheel falls off Boeing 757 while awaiting takeoff.
I don't even want to know what. Oh, a nose wheel. I know what that means now. Yeah, I know what that wheel is.
It's the wheel under the nose of the plane.
That's not good.
So Delta Airlines Boeing 757 was lining up on the tarmac to take off, and the wheel fell off. and the
Whoa.
wheel fell off and rolled down a hill.
Okay.
Well, there's two
I've never
wheels
seen.
on.
That's
the,
nice. I've never seen
like,
a hill at an airport. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was cute. It like rolled off and went down some hill, and everyone was like, "Huh, we don't have a wheel anymore. What happened to that?" At some point, don't you say, "I'm not sure we should get in these things anymore"?
Well,
like, at what point is that the answer? Because they are finding they have grounded now. They're saying the door plugs need to be looked at immediately, like as soon as possible. And it's a second airplane. They're going back through older models and finding that they've taken shortcuts on older models. And there are reports that upon delivery, there are some people who are finding, like the airlines are finding things like wrenches underneath the floorboards and things that don't work, and they have to call up Boeing and be like, "Hey, why is there a wrench inside the plane? Isn't that supposed to have not been in the plane?" So Boeing not doing great, and using it now, since this is an all-union show. The Boeing and Seattle area unions have had to delay contract negotiations.
Well,
because of this effort. In fact,
I would think it'd be a good time to delay them, right? I mean, right?
Well, you'd think so, but part of the reason why is because the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, which is the union, they've been named as a party in the National Transportation Safety Board investigation into the door plug. So they're
trying to blame the workers.
The workers.
Yeah.
They're involved.
And not the cost cutting.
It's not the cost cutting. And speaking of the cost cutting, here's what I did for you today, Damien, because I know you love human beings so much.
I mean, I do. I like them. I like them.
I don't. I went through the 2011 Boeing board that greenlit the MAX 8 planes, and I did my own version of a skills matrix.
So 2011, again, would put the current CEO, Dave Calhoun, he had already been on that board for 3 years.
Yes, he was already on the board. And he actually, prior to that, knew everybody on the board because he was at GE for a long time. Mike Zavorowski was at GE. Jim McNerney, I think, was at GE. Half the board had been at GE at the same time. So they all knew each other. Now, I'm not going to rehash how much they knew each other.
I'll say there's no probably better way to provide credible oversight than to have like a bunch of your buddies kind of show up with some sushi and
Yeah, you know, like when I went to go watch the first time the Patriots were like in the playoffs in like a decade with all my friends, those were the people that I think should provide me sound business advice.
Yeah. Actually, I'd like to hear that. Yeah.
We ate 2 pastrami Reuben sandwiches each, and it was a debaucherous night. Well, so I did my own skills matrix because I actually took like what are their degrees, what is their history? Because when you look at the Boeing skills matrix today, it claims that almost everyone on the board has engineering expertise.
Yeah,
but they lump it in.
This is one of the things that we have complained about for many years is that first of all, the disclosure of who these directors really are and their skill sets is inadequate in the right.
I would say that's an understatement.
The companies can report all kinds of different things, and they can create their own skills matrix table, and they can really, unfortunately, say anything they want. They could basically tell investors that if you worked at a company that even has an engineering department, maybe you're skilled in engineering, and you can just tell investors that.
Well, here's the thing that I noticed, that on this board, like currently on the board, is which one is it? Currently on the board is somebody who I'm just going to say I didn't tag the person, but there's somebody who's on the Chevron board or was on the Chevron board, and Exxon board. In the Exxon skills matrix, they are not listed as having engineering expertise, but on the Boeing skills matrix, they are listed as having engineering expertise.
Yeah.
So these skills matrices are effectively whatever you decide is your skill is your skill. So I looked at where they actually work.
I don't want to go down a huge rabbit hole, but that's basically fraud, is it not? Fraud to misrepresent the skill sets and the experience of your actual board members? A little bit. It's
like,
a little bit of fraud.
Let's just say it's like when you're accounting for something, you're just making a judgment that maybe it goes in this box and not that box. And depending on where you go, you could put it in any box you want. It's just organizational differences. But in this case, I did our own version of a skills matrix, and I did it for the 2011 Boeing board and the 2023 Boeing board because I wanted to see what the differences were. And what I found out will shock approximately zero people. In 2011, only 8% of the board members were engineers at one point in their careers
8%.
with degrees in engineering.
Okay.
That's one person, effectively.
Yeah.
Like that's one person was
One
an
out of
engineer
12,
on the
basically,
Boeing
yeah.
board. Meanwhile, 42% had MBAs and 33% had undergrad degrees in finance or something finance related, like accounting or economics. So the vast majority of the board in 2011 was focused on counting dollars, right? In fact, 42% then went on to work in finance or accounting, and a third of the board was actually hired strictly because of their government contacts. They were designed to lobby the Pentagon, the FAA. They were ex-government. So we have a board with one engineer on it, green lighting the MAX 8 plane, and everybody else on the board, for the most part, is in finance or government. Like they're just lobbying the Pentagon and they're counting the dollars. Since then, in 2023, they've added actual engineers. 31% of the current board has an engineering background. That's pretty good, right?
Well,
That's good.
in response to the crash, no doubt.
Well, it took several hundred people
Right.
dying for them to say
Sure,
maybe an
sure,
engineer is worthwhile. Oh, but still, they actually also added their finance background. 54% of the board has a finance and accounting background now, not the 42% that had it before. So they've added the engineers. We've got more engineers, but we've drowned them out with a few more people in finance. They got rid of all the government lobbying because it's not helping.
Right.
It really didn't do them any favors. And they added a bit of finance and sales. But here's the kicker, because I looked at the thing that matters most that comes from free float analytics, which is influence. It doesn't matter if you have 31% of the board with an engineering background. If no one listens to the engineers, they have no influence.
Sure.
And no one listens to the engineers. 63% of board influence is with accounting. 22% of board influence is engineering. 55% of the board influence got their undergrad degrees in finance, and more than a third of the board influence actually is marketing. So this is what I'm saying. The people you may not care about, but that they know something seems like it's relevant to the conversation
Especially at companies like Boeing.
when the wheel of the nose under the nose of the plane falls off.
Yeah.
Seems like something you want to know.
I think
I
that,
don't know. Am I wrong?
and I think the man you were referring to was Lawrence Kellner.
That's who.
So
it was.
Lawrence
Larry
Kellner is an
Kellner.
interesting case because he sits on both the Exxon and Boeing's board. Now, he was the CEO of Continental Airlines, but he became CEO because he was the CFO first. So he has no skill set in engineering. His skill set is in finance, but Boeing is fudging that because he was a CEO of a major airline.
That's how they're doing the
Yeah,
skill
that's their
sets.
fudge.
They
That's their
basically-
fudge path.
Their fudge is engineering leadership. is what they wrote.
Right.
Like,
Even though
have you led an engineer?
he started
before?
off as a CFO. Yeah.
You know what doesn't help? Door plugs. Having engineering leadership.
Forget the door plugs.
doesn't
I
help.
want that nose wheel.
That's all we got. That's Hazelnut Rawlis. I am your analyst soul, Matt Miscardi. We are Free Float. Come back. Tomorrow we have a proxy countdown show.
Oh.
We're covering on the big vote.
Oh,
We're covering
Apple.
Apple.
That's
is
it.
Apple.
That's the only company in the world, really. That's the big one, Apple.
I mean, it's the company.
company.
We're covering it. We're going to give you vote recommendations. If you own a share of Apple, you want to vote your proxy, tomorrow's show is for you.
No swearing.
Otherwise,
No swearing.
We'll be back on Friday with
Maybe one swear. Maybe
the
one.
wrap up with everybody else at Free Float. Until then, goodbye.